Tonight on the Daily Debrief, the family of a South Carolina woman accused of kidnapping her husband's mistress is in trouble for violating a judge's order. This as a witness claims to have seen a bizarre picture of the victim after her disappearance.
Could she move at all?
I don't think so.
Why did Heather Elvis disappear, leaving her belongings behind? Why did this woman tattoo her name near her husband's genitals? Why did she chain him to their bed to keep him home at night? And why did the defendant call her sister at 3 a.m. the day Elvis disappeared? That's tonight on the Daily Debrief. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Debrief. Testimony is heating up in the case of a woman accused of kidnapping her husband's lover who was half her age. This trial became stranger and stranger as testimony rolled along. Prosecutors believe Tammy Moorer and her husband Sidney together kidnapped Heather Elvis, the woman with whom Sidney had been having an affair. Several witnesses testified that Elvis may have been pregnant with Cindy Moorer's child. Elvis has never been seen or heard from since the date of the alleged kidnapping. Authorities say she basically vanished. In court today, the defendant's sister said she babysat Tammy Moorer's kids overnight when authorities believed the Moorers were kidnapping Heather Elvis. That sister received a phone call at 3 a.m. from Tammy Moorer saying she was back home and that the kids could also be sent home. The sister disagreed that the hour was strange because that's when the defendant and her husband usually get home from work.
Why would they go home in the middle of the night?
They would always begin their school normally. Since it's the next day, it counts towards their school. So a lot of times, as soon as they got back from work or whatever they were doing, they would come and say, once they pulled up, I would send them home. They would walk across the yard to them. And then from there, they went and did whatever they needed to do for school or go to bed or whatever they were going to do for the night.
Right. And when that happened, what triggers it? In other words, does Tammy come in the house, or does she call somebody or text, or how does that work?
Sometimes they would come in the house and pick them up, depending on if they were asleep or not, but they were all able to walk at that point, so they walked over on that night. So she actually called, or no, she texted me that night saying that she was home.
All right. And you know about what time that was?
It was the beginning of 3 o'clock in the morning. I believe it was 3:10.
In a combative cross-examination, the sister also said Tammy Moorer told her about the now infamous payphone call that is said to have involved the defendant, her husband, and the victim. Authorities think the defendant was trying to lure Heather Elvis out by using an unfamiliar number.
Do you remember telling the police that Tammy told you her and Sidney had called Heather Elvis the morning of the 18th? I mean, that's what they told. They told me they went to their job that night, that they came back to their car, that there was a note saying you can call me, or something like that. And that's why they called her that night. Do you remember that?
I remember there was a note on their truck. I don't know if that was the 18th.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what you're saying.
When you were talking to the police and they were asking you about the payphone call, the officer said, so Sidney's telling her to leave her alone. And you replied back, I'm sure Tammy was sitting right beside him with the window down.
I recall during this interview being very confused because I was being lied to, majority of it, including about the vasectomy. I had no half of what they were asking me. I had no knowledge of hardly any of it, but they tried to convince me otherwise.
Okay. So you didn't know what you told the police. Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is that sounds mumbled. It doesn't sound like what I said.
Earlier today, a deputy testified that 5 people, some of whom are the defendant's family members, violated a witness sequestration order. Those 5 people were said to have been watching the proceedings on a laptop and then from cell phones from a room in the courthouse.
And I'm going to cut right to it. You've been present in court for the entirety of this trial?
Yes, sir.
You understand the witnesses were subject to sequestration?
Yes, sir.
You understand that means they're not allowed to watch live streaming video of this trial?
Yes, sir.
Do you have information that they indeed have violated that order?
Yes, sir.
Please inform the court what you know, what you've seen, and what you've heard.
All right. I was escorting Miss Moore out of the courtroom. The witnesses were sequestered in one of our side rooms. And she opened the door. The children were in there. Miss Polly was in there, her mother. And they had a laptop computer sitting on top of the table in the middle. And it had the live stream on it. I took the computer out of the room and gave it to the gentleman that was also in there, Richard McGowan, that claimed it was his computer. Had him put the computer up. Told them that they knew they weren't allowed to be watching it because we'd already spoken to them about it. And then went back probably 20 minutes later and they still had their cell phones.
Had you known they had their cell phones, would you have confiscated those too?
Absolutely.
Ultimately, the judge took the drastic step of telling those witnesses they couldn't be called to the stand. It is one of the most drastic remedies in a judge's toolbox. Attorney Ross Kramer joins us tonight on the Daily Debrief to break this case down. Ross, good to see you. Let's look back at what that sister said. She said basically that the police were twisting her words in their reports.
Yeah, she said that she had trouble understanding what she was being asked and she didn't really believe what the police were telling her. The sister was on the stand for a really long time to give very little valuable information. It was sort of half an alibi where she said she got this phone call that the defendant said she was coming home. Not really information about what the sister was doing before or after. It was a lot of testimony for, I think, very little payoff.
I would agree with that assessment as well. You know, the big question is whether the defendant is going to take the stand herself because she promised to, but we did not see that today.
No, I mean, this is one of the ultimate questions in any criminal trial, whether the defendant's going to testify. The defense lawyer made a very bold move by promising the testimony in opening statements. A defense lawyer can get around that because he can stand up at closing and say, we promised it, but we thought there was going to be some evidence of her guilt here. It turns out she doesn't need to testify in her own behalf, and under the Constitution, she has no obligation to do so. But still, when you set up a promise like that, usually to the jury, you want to fulfill it.
You usually want to deliver what you promise, and we are waiting to see if Tammy Moore is going to take the stand tomorrow. Another bombshell piece of testimony occurred in this case yesterday. This came from a relative who testified that Sydney Moore showed him a picture of the victim after she disappeared. The photo made it look like Heather Elvis could neither walk nor talk. That relative did not give many details.
While you were over there, after Heather went missing, did you see a picture of Heather Elvis at that house?
Yes.
And what did you see that picture on? When you saw that picture of Heather Elvis, in that picture, could she move at all?
I don't think so.
Okay. And did it look like she could talk?
No.
And after you saw the picture, what did you do?
Nothing. I didn't know what to do.
Okay. Did you stay in the house or did you leave?
I left.
Okay. And how did you feel when you saw the picture?
I didn't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay. But you left once you saw the picture?
Yes.
Okay. At any point, did you tell the police what you saw on that phone?
It wasn't until later I told them.
Did you, after seeing that picture, continue to hang out with Tammy and Sydney?
No.
Defense attorneys cut into that witness's credibility almost immediately on cross.
Have you been lying since you learned to talk?
No.
Did you start lying when you were 10 or 12?
I guess so.
All right. And so that means you've been lying since you were 13 years old, right?
Yeah.
No question about that, is there?
No, everybody does it.
All right. And you've been charged with burglary, right?
Yeah.
Did you get convicted of that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get sentenced for that?
Yes.
And you did that to support your drug habit?
Yeah.
All right. And you also were charged with 2 counts of B&E audit, right?
Yeah.
And that's breaking and entering into somebody else's car, right?
Yes, sir.
The cases of breaking and entering an automobile, those cases are pending here in Overy County.
Yes.
And the prosecutor's office that's handling those cases is the same prosecutor's office that's brought this case, right?
I believe so.
And at least in your mind, you're hoping you get some kind of break for giving information, right?
No.
No?
No.
Are you hoping they'll treat you worse?
Hoping they'll treat me equal to everybody else.
Ross, Kramer, back to you on this one here. This witness has a criminal record, but he said that the state did nothing to help him, at least not yet, in return for his testimony. Is he credible at all?
Yeah, I mean, not that he has a criminal record. He has open cases with these same prosecutors, and he has a motive to come in here and lie, to have this jailhouse revelation that he saw this picture, but he doesn't really remember any details about it. He didn't do anything about it after the fact. I think this is a very, very bad witness for the prosecution. When a prosecutor calls a witness like this, they're tying their credibility as an attorney that's giving an opening and closing statement, and they're tying their whole case's credibility to this one witness. And when you put up somebody who's just not believable, that impacts how a jury is going to see all your other witnesses.
There's no forensic evidence that this photo existed on this phone. They've examined the phones. And look, the description of what was allegedly in this so-called bombshell photo is vague. What did the victim look like? How was she restrained? Why couldn't she walk? Why couldn't she talk? We don't have any details here.
You know, a prosecutor can't control who gives a call over from a jailhouse and says, I have information, but they control who they put on the witness stand, who they put under oath, and who they tie the state's credibility to and say, this is a witness who's going to testify to you, the jury, and give the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I think they made a very, very tough call here.
I look forward to more analysis, Ross. Look, the roommate of victim Heather Elvis testified earlier in the case that Heather called her at 1:44 a.m. the morning she disappeared. Then the roommate discussed this pregnancy test, which authorities found in their apartment, and went on to illustrate the relationship between Sydney Moorer and Heather Elvis.
If somebody found a pregnancy test in that bathroom in y'all's apartment on December 20th of 2013, would that have been
speculation.
Would that have been your pregnancy test?
No.
Without telling me what Heather said, can you tell me why you didn't want her to call Sydney back?
I didn't agree with the relationship from day one.
And did you have any concerns for her?
I did because of what had happened when the relationship ended.
And what had happened when the relationship ended that gave you those concerns?
Phone calls, text messages. Heather was petrified of Tammy. She thought she was going to show up to our job. She wanted nothing to do with it. She wanted nothing to do with Tammy. She just wanted to be left alone.
From there, the roommate said Heather Elvis was looking forward to a new job and a new life. The only thing missing from their apartment, though, after Heather disappeared, was Heather's favorite outfit. Nothing had been packed up. It did not appear Heather Elvis was leaving town. On cross-examination, though, the defense asked about the relationship between Heather Elvis and Sydney Moorer.
She knew he was married.
She did.
Is that why you didn't agree with the relationship?
I was under the assumption that they had an open marriage. That's what he had told me, and that's what he had told her, but I still didn't agree with it.
You're aware of her having sex at work with Sydney?
No, I did not know.
You didn't know that? Y'all best friends?
Yes.
Y'all talk all the time?
Yes.
Are there some things you didn't know?
I knew they had sex. I just didn't ask her where.
I think we all know they had sex. But you never heard about that at work?
I heard it in passing, but she never came to me and said, this is the places that we had sex.
Sure. Okay.
She was heartbroken.
About their relationship.
Correct.
Did you ever see a positive pregnancy test from him?
No.
Did you see any that said inconclusive?
Yes.
Errors?
Yes.
On redirect, prosecutors tried to eliminate the possibility that other individuals were involved in Heather Elvis's disappearance.
Your knowledge, Casey Brown mentioned Jeremy and a guy named Jared. Did either one of them contact her in the early morning hours of December 18th?
No.
And during the time she was gaining weight and taking that pregnancy test, who was the person she was sleeping with before that?
Sydney.
No further questions.
Moving on now to another case we're following, and that is the Ohio murder trial of Carl Wimpy Jr. Testimony entered its third day today as prosecutors tried to prove murder and assault charges stemming from a fight at a Toledo area tavern. The victim, 59-year-old Daniel Vasquez, died several days after the defendant punched him. Wimpy took the stand himself today to argue that he punched back in self-defense.
Through your mindset of that one. I'm just thinking of how I'm just trying to protect myself. At that moment, I'm trying to analyze what's going on around me.
Okay. Go ahead. And you see some hand movements by this individual, Mr. Vasquez, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you feel that Mr. Vasquez was a threat to you at that particular moment?
Yes, I did, because I felt like he tried to tackle me or grab me. He grabbed me from behind. I don't know what his intention was.
Did you feel at that time he was from the so-called other side?
Yes.
That case grinds along. Still ahead, though, tonight on the Daily Debrief, an update from the case of the real estate heir accused of murder in California. Plus, a new arrest in the case of Larry Nasser, the gymnastics doctor accused of dozens of cases of sexual abuse. A fugitive task force had to be called in this time around. Find out why straight after the break. Welcome back, everybody. A preliminary hearing continues for a real estate heir accused of murdering a woman who is said to have had information about the disappearance of his wife. Robert Durst is accused of killing Susan Berman in the year 2000. Prosecutors claim Durst shot her because she had information about the 1982 disappearance of Durst's wife. Durst has denied involvement in his wife's disappearance and in the shooting death of Susan Berman. The hearing came to a halt the other day because the court didn't have adult diapers in stock for the defendant. The purpose of the hearing is for the judge to decide whether there's enough evidence to send Durst to trial. More trouble for the authorities prosecuting movie mogul Harvey Weinstein of sex crimes. According to Manhattan prosecutors, the lead detective told one of the women accusing Weinstein of misconduct to delete any messages from her phone that she wanted to keep private. That's an issue because the advice could have led to an incomplete record of communication about what happened. But prosecutors say the witness never actually deleted anything. Prosecutors recently dropped one of the charges against Weinstein after evidence surfaced which suggested any contact might have been consensual. A Kentucky killer is headed to prison for life for the shooting death of her attorney boyfriend. That late word came after an all-day sentencing hearing in the case of Shayna Hubers. Jurors convicted her of murdering Ryan Poston after a second trial. A judge ordered that new trial after it turned out that a juror in the first case wasn't clear about his own criminal record. Hubers said she shot Poston in self-defense after a sexually violent relationship, but prosecutors used text messages and witness testimony to prove she was the one pressuring him. Two attorneys made famous in the Netflix film Making a Murderer are fighting back at what they call, quote, bogus forensic evidence. Jerry Buting and Dean Strang defended Stephen Avery against murder charges between 2005 and 2007. Buting announced this week that he and Strang are pairing up with the man who oversees the Wisconsin Innocence Project, who also represented Avery, on an initiative called the Center for Integrity in Forensic Sciences. The nonprofit will reportedly work towards exposing questionable science in American courtrooms. Another Making a Murderer defense attorney appeared in court today, this time on the other side of the law. Len Kaczynski, who briefly represented co-defendant Brendan Dassey, faces charges of stalking and violating a restraining order for his actions towards a female court clerk. Kaczynski, until recently, was a judge for a small municipality in northeastern Wisconsin. A trial date in his case is set for December 6th. Now for a look at other crimes making headlines across the country, here is Anthony Velez.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. Authorities in Atlanta have dropped assault charges against rapper T.I. stemming from an incident with a security guard at the gated community where he lives earlier this year. T.I., whose real name is Clifford Harris, was arrested in May following an altercation with the security guard, Uwan James, at his gated community in Atlanta. The rapper was initially charged with disorderly conduct and public drunkenness, but a simple assault charge was tacked on in July. Attorneys for Christopher Watts, the Colorado man accused of killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters, reportedly asked to keep his health records a secret. Watts is accused of killing his wife Shannon and his 2 daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. Watts faces 5 counts of first-degree murder and 4 other felony charges. Watts' next court date is November 19th. Former USA Gymnastics president Steve Perry is under arrest after a grand jury in Texas indicted him for allegedly tampering with evidence in the sex assault case against Larry Nassar. Penny allegedly ordered the removal of documents from the Caroli Ranch relating to Nassar's activities at the Gymnastics Training Center after authorities began to investigate mounting allegations against Nassar. Nassar pleaded guilty to an array of child pornography and sex abuse charges and is currently serving a 60-year sentence in federal prison to be followed by up to 175 years in state prison. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for the Daily Debrief.
Ross Kramer, one last time here. Look, this is not a surprise. Whenever you have this many accusations piling up against one person, it's natural to look up the organizational chain to say, look, how did this go on as long as it did involving so many people?
I mean, this was terrible judgment here by the defendant now who moved documents out of the ranch. You know, this is something that lawyers will always tell clients. The cover-up makes the crime worse and is a crime in itself. You know that documents are going to be relevant here. You know that if you move them, or you should know that if you move them, you're going to be a target as well as the initial defendants. All those documents have to be preserved. This was a real big mistake that I think he's going to come back and pay for.
Well, you know, this is going to be another part of this saga that we watch play out here on the Law and Crime Network. Ross, really appreciate you joining us today on the Daily Debrief. I know you'll come back again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's all the time we have for today on the Daily Debrief. A reminder, of course, that Law and Crime will be streaming the trials we discuss beginning tomorrow at 9 a.m. We are live from at least 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. From all of us live here at Law and Crime, this is Aaron Keller. Have a very good evening. We will see you back here tomorrow.